I think anybody who's either working in or doing business in or investing in ELL, English language learning, who is not thinking about digital transformation, AI, really needs to be. If you're not in it, you need to be in it, because it is coming. It has arrived. It's already here.
Hi everyone, you're listening to Inside Japan. I'm Charlie, and this is the third in our three-part series with Simon Moran. In our other episodes, we talked about why you shouldn't start an English school and the myth of self-sponsoring your visa. And on this episode, we're going to talk about whether it's possible to make a viable long-term living as an English teacher in Japan. I hope you enjoy this conversation. So, Simon, you're back again, and we're going to talk about English language education in Japan. And mostly I really want to talk about making a livable wage as a teacher here, because I think most people think that you need to go the master's degree / university teacher route if you want to make a livable wage in Japan. Is that still true, or is that something that is kind of just one of those rumors that get spread around by foreigners in Japan?
First, thanks for having me back on the show again.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
Nice to be back here. I think, if you're talking about staying long term in Japan, i.e., through planning or through default, and I think I'm probably one of those people who've now realised that I may well retire in Japan by default because I didn't really plan to do it. It's probably not conceivable to be a teacher in a private language school for the whole of your career in Japan and make a satisfactory salary. You will hit the glass ceiling very, very quickly. Sure, you'll be able to supplement that with outside gigs, and leaving aside all the visa stuff that we've spoken about in previous episodes. But then, there are only a certain number of hours a week. And so people have always thought, well, yeah, I'll just get a master's and I'll get a job at a university. But certainly I know lots of people who do that. I know people who work at 5 different universities in a week, juggling different jobs. And I know people who are tenured, and those positions are fewer and fewer. And there is quite a lot. It's probably worth speaking to somebody who specializes in all of this, but there's a lot. I think you had Dennis from the union on a few episodes back.
Yes, and we talked about how the union and how they've worked with some teachers who are having difficulties with the university system, where the university system really does kind of make it difficult to stay in one place at a time because of the legal restrictions on companies who they can hire and how they need to treat those people with unlimited term contracts if they stick around for more than 5 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there are some very good university jobs going, it's never something that's interested me. The idea that, I think the vast majority of people who have English professor on their name card are English teachers in big schools with slightly older children in them than you would find in private language schools, to whom the class means they need a pass mark to graduate from university, and that's all. Most of them are not English majors. Most of them don't take it that seriously. How many young kids take university seriously? First off, I think is in Japan, is the first thing to address. It's hard to get into university. It's easy to pass. People go to university and have fun with their mates for 4 years, and long may that continue. And getting into university is probably the biggest challenge for most kids at university. If you then show up enough and pass all of the school's rules, you will graduate because they don't want to fail you. I don't think a lot of I know lots of people who have done a really good job under very difficult circumstances in lots of different avenues. And lots of English teachers at universities who do a good job. But I'm not sure it's the secure track that it used to be. There's a lot of outsourcing happening as well. I know a couple of people at some universities who are engaging with the union and trying to fight outsourcing. And I think it's an uphill battle for them. And honestly, from the point of view, why should anybody's position be protected in any way that anybody else's isn't? If you're a for-profit university, you have to realize that you're a cog in a profit-making machine, and at some point, a bean counter is going to look at the bottom line. Just because you teach at a university, don't think that anybody's position should be more protected than if you're working as a car mechanic.
Right. So then the question is, what are some pathways that people can do if they're either just starting out in Japan, or they've been here for a little while and they're thinking, this is where I want to be? What are some things that they can do to set themselves up for a future of success where they aren't, we've had issues. I think recently I remember seeing someone's resume. They were applying for a preschool teacher job at age something like 45 or something like that, with N5 in Japanese after 20 years of being in Japan, and applying for an entry-level kindergarten job. It just made me think, wow, like things are sometimes, I think people don't realize that you have to set yourself up for success. You can't just drift from job to job and hope that it works out,
Yeah, I think, being as qualified and as skilled as you possibly can be are good ideas. And obviously we're in Japan, so you should be able to speak Japanese as a foreigner. It's going to open more doors to you. Japanese is not that difficult to learn, and here we are immersed in it all around us. Get as much Japanese as you can, get as many qualifications as you can, join as many professional organizations as you can, get to know as many people as you can, broaden your horizons and grow your network. I think there's somebody once said something along the lines of, a job only appears advertised online or elsewhere when all other networks have been exhausted. So if you're a university teacher, for example, lots of university teachers find gigs through other university teachers, and if you don't know any university teachers, you won't find those gigs. So I mean, it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario there, I suppose. But, join ETJ, join JALT, join OTJ, Online Teaching Japan, which is a new online organization. There are others. If you're Filipino, join FETJ, which is a great organization, which focuses obviously on Filipinos who are teachers of English in Japan. There are other organizations. There are organizations like NIE, Japanese-run school owners organizations. And going back to what we said in an earlier episode, specialization. If you can specialize, you're going to be more hireable in that niche than somebody who's not. So if you're bilingual and you can use tech skills and you can teach, programming in English with and translating to Japanese on the fly. You've got a specialized, that's completely off the top of my head. I don't know if there's any call for that, but you've got a specialized skill set, If you're if you're a game programmer, for example, you've got a specialized skill set. Get into programming. That's what I say. Get out of English, get into programming. Learn to code, young man, learn to code.
Yeah, well, I mean, that does raise a really important question, is how much, especially in English language education, how much is digital transformation and AI and all of that stuff coming?
Yeah,
because
it's coming.
Exactly, because I definitely noticed that instead of going to a Spanish class, because I've been learning Spanish recently, instead of going to a Spanish class, I started just by using apps.
Yeah, right. What did you use? Did you use Duolingo?
I tried Duolingo. I found it really irritating.
Yeah, I found it irritating as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it, that I think people are getting foundations in things without really having that much contact time with other humans.
Yeah.
And that I think is going to have a big impact, especially on English language education, as the younger people move in and they've all got, the iPhones and they're much more interested in doing something without having to sort of put themselves through the pain of signing up for things at a local classroom. I think that's probably going to take a big chunk out of the market.
I think anybody who's either working in or doing business in or investing in ELL, English language learning, who is not thinking about digital transformation, AI, really needs to be. If you're not in it, you need to be in it, because it is coming. It has arrived. It's already here. There are so many language learning products online already. And if there are well-known ones like Rosetta Stone, which obviously they've just been through some big reorganization internationally. I'm not sure about Japan, but they have a blended learning solution, right? And it's been around for a very, very long time. It's exploited pretty well in Japan. Blended learning, even if face-to-face stays at the level that it is now, which it face-to-face in person I'm talking about here, even if it stays at the same level of usage now, which I don't think it will, it's increasingly blended learning is going to be a part of that. So if I speak from our point of view, and not just digital transformation and AI, but sort of tech provision, we have a school. I have a school that my company has a school that it owns, and we provide services to other schools that we don't own through franchises and affiliates. We publish learning materials in print, audio, video, and now in digital form. So we have one app that's out, which has been out for quite a while. We have a tech platform called Live Schedule, which is basically an online solution to running a language school. It does everything except teaching, and we actually do local digital marketing now as well. It doesn't quite answer the phone, but it handles messaging, and it does timetabling and salary calculations, and you can look at all your stats, and it's just basically a school management system in a box. So we've had that for a while. We've used that internally for a long time, and that's a product that's available. We use that with our schools and our franchise and affiliates, but that's also available for other people to use. We also have a couple of digital learning products, which we're releasing very, very soon. One is a thing called Bokoko, which is a digital library. Now that started off as a physical and digital book shop. It's called Bokoko because it's a disrupted book company. So it's BOKOCO. So it's a kind of anagram of book company, Bokoko. But that hints at the fact that disruption is here. And so that's a digital lending library, subscription library, which only has books in it at the moment. Games are going into it this week, and video is going into it in a couple of weeks. And what that will allow the learner to do is enter Bokoko, do a placement test of some description, and then engage in media which the learner enjoys. So the idea is that we know what you know, we know what you need to know next, and we know what you like. And we're going to nudge you towards games, videos, and books for now, and exercises and challenges that you like, that are just at the sweet spot. Not too difficult, not too easy, just right. The Goldilocks sweet spot. So the games use SRS to do that, and then we basically the tech inside the system reads all of the books, compares the words in that book to well-known word lists, the New Dolch word list, the General Service word list. You could put in a vocabulary word list for ACAN or Cambridge Starters, Movers, Flyers, any text you like. It compares the grammar to grammar lists, so it knows what you've covered. And then through the games, through gameplay, we know what you know. So the assumption on the gameplay is that if you get something right 3 times consecutively, you know it, which allows for a little bit of chance. So we can see words and phrases covered and words and phrases known, which then allows us to project what you don't know. And if we get into a bit of theory here, if we're going to crash in and
what is it, I+1?
I+1, yeah, exactly. So what I know, and then a little bit above what I know, we can feed people that language. But because we get to know their interests, we ask them what they like, and they will say whether they like books or not. It may be that you've got the English language consists 85 or 95% of it consists of the use of 5 syntactical patterns and about 3,000 words. That's all you need, really. It's not very, very much. And so if we know which of that you know and which of it you don't, and we know that you like, you like cars and trains, we can feed you stories and videos about rockets going to the moon with vocabulary that you don't quite know yet. And structures that you're familiar with, and challenge you with on some of them. So, we're already doing that. That's out. It'll never be finished. We'll be working on it constantly, but it's inevitable that will become part of a flipped solution. So, we have teachers, parents, and learners accounts on there, and the teacher can see what the student has read, what what words and structures the student has covered and what they actually know. And we'll be able to see that, say, for example, they're struggling with a particular structure, and the teacher can then intervene a lot more quickly. So that Bokuko, that solution, is going to get to know the issues that learners are having a lot more quickly and in a lot more detail than a teacher ever could by spending time with them, which will free the teacher up to engage the learner in the classroom, face to face, in person, through human contact, in a much more accurate learning way, but in their naturally engaging human way. So
because it sounds like to me that digital transformation is not going to replace teachers. It's not like teachers are going to be out of the classroom and everyone's just going to be using an app on their phone, but it's kind of supplementary to the teacher's work, which will then allow the teacher to focus on things that require a little bit more sort of broad thinking patterns. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think face-to-face in person's ever going to go away. But yeah, it will be AI, not necessarily driven, but certainly supplemented. Could well be driven. But so those teacher skills are skills of engagement and leading and discovery and curation. Those teachers are going to have to curate this new brave new world of digital transformation with all of these learning opportunities that the learners have, and they have to embrace them. If any teacher has said to any learner that, no, you've got to learn everything from me, they're deluded first.
Yeah, and I would run a mile from a teacher who said that.
You would, right, and you're doing a disservice to the learner. So teachers and schools are going to have to embrace this. Teachers are going to have to become increasingly tech savvy, which I think young people naturally will be. But we're talking about teachers here. I think we have to remember that a lot of people who are in this industry in Japan are not qualified teachers, have not had any teacher training, and have been employed as a native speaker or a fluent speaker who can give fluency practice rather than actually being a teacher. Whereas being a qualified teacher is all about knowing how the learning process happens. There's a certain knowledge of neuroscience and human behavior that you need. And those teachers will thrive in an AI-assisted environment, whereas the organ grinder's monkey, for want of a better expression, will disappear. And I welcome that.
Yeah. Well, I've been surprised actually that this was one of the things that I've learned from working with Jobs in Japan, is that a lot of teachers coming to Japan have it's one of the only countries in the world where you don't have to have any kind of qualifications to teach English here. You can come here just as a person with a university degree in any subject, and you can come and teach. And so the company that I joined with, they did a criminal records background check in the UK. But I think there are some companies in Japan, and I don't think any company since then has asked to do that. And so, maybe one of them did when I was working at a public university. But that's the thing, is that maybe those days are kind of either over or they're coming to an end, where people will be they might still have people in public schools, because I think Japan, especially in Japan, government schools and public schools tend to lag a good decade or so behind the current tech. But even that eventually is going to be phased out, and we'll end up having teachers who maybe need to learn how to use this technology to actually do their jobs in a usable way, in a proper way.
I think that's already happening, and I think the pandemic, for all that Japan had a pretty soft lockdown or two, certainly brought that to the fore. I was a member before the pandemic. I was a kind of affiliate member, associate member, whatever, of a Japanese teachers run ICT group, and I attended a couple of their meetings, and I had a little bit of exposure to some of the tech that they're using. Obviously, there's been the Giga project in Japan, right, to get devices into the hands of all elementary school kids, in fact, all kids, and that's actually happened 2 or 3 years ahead of schedule. Wow. So, this idea overseas that Japan is this tech-savvy nation because they've got good trains and fancy toilets, and Japan invented the Walkman all those years ago. I think people don't actually realize how low tech Japan is in a lot of ways. Lack of heating, fax machines still being used, that kind of thing.
Well, I think that was one of the I think when who I forgot the name of the guy. Was it Kono, the guy who was running for prime minister? He'd been responsible in part for Japan's response to the COVID pandemic, which has, as far as I can tell, has been incredibly successful compared to the West. I think the death rate in Japan is 100 times less than the United States. And one of the things that he ran on was he wanted to remove fax machines from the government offices and modernize the government offices. And almost immediately his candidacy disappeared and Kishida ended
Yeah,
up winning. And I think that was
yeah.
probably a big part of it, is that they're so married to their fax machines and that they're so used to that being their way of.
Well, I think a result of that was that Hanko use has actually dropped, but I think previous to that, and I can't remember the guy's name, but who essentially was the digital transformation cabinet minister, famously had never owned a PC.
Oh yes,
Uh,
the
can't remember his name.
the
Yeah,
cybersecurity minister of Japan
right.
didn't have an email address. He'd never used email.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Sure, he had a good committee around him. But so classrooms, if we're talking about state schools, classrooms are often not that well equipped. I recently observed an elementary school, the lower grades where English isn't a required subject, but it was taught at this school, and then at the high grades where it was. And actually, it was an old building, but it was actually great to see the teachers. They were using technology pretty well. They had a projector, and they were using laptops, and they were using software. These teachers are pretty young, certainly younger than me. I think one of them was in her 30s, one was in her 40s. The homeroom teacher, I think he was, can't remember how old he was, but younger than me, not that old. So that was pretty good to see. But yeah, Japanese classrooms are not that tech savvy, but I think people are. So it's coming, and people need to be familiar with it. If we've touched there on teaching qualifications, I think that it's disgraceful actually that, and this is not just true of English schools, but you can run any school unregulated. But if we just look at English schools, they're completely unregulated unless you apply for Ninka or Ninka Guide. But you could run what's known as an Eikaiwa school, a private language school, without any regulation. Don't need any qualifications. You don't actually even need a university degree. You could have come to Japan, got off a boat, or left school at 16, been on a boat till you were 25, got off a boat in Japan, married a local, you get your spouse visa, and then you could be a permanent resident, and you could run an English school. You might have a criminal record. Who knows? You may have sexually abused minors somewhere in your past, and you could run an English school. Nobody would check anything.
Yeah, that's really
all you would get asked when you entered was, I think, new entrants get asked if they've got any convictions, right?
Well, I had to do that for when I entered Japan for my COE, but I don't know what the
No, but you would have had to do that for your company, not for immigration.
Okay.
That would have been your company's requirement. There was no, as far as I'm aware, unless this has changed, there is no requirement for a criminal background check. I think there may be a question that says, have you ever been convicted of an offence? To which, if you answer no, I'm not sure it gets followed up on. I obviously haven't applied as a new entrant for a very, very long time, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been here almost 10 years, so I would hope that would be something that they
there is no regulation of English schools. So, for example, in the UK, we used to have a share in a school in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and it's accredited by the British Council. And so, not only do all the teachers need a background check, but the host families who would host, largely European kids, but sometimes Asian kids, as guests, they all need criminal background checks.
Yeah.
And taxi drivers in the UK need to have a criminal background check. So a taxi driver in the UK is more suited to working with children than a teacher in Japan is.
Yeah.
In some ways, because of the background check. So there's no need for a teacher's qualification. There's no need for a criminal background check. And I welcome regulation. I think this industry should be regulated. If I wanted to open up a restaurant, at a minimum, I would have to have a health and safety check. All of the staff would need to provide a sample, which is tested at City Hall to make sure that we don't have any communicable diseases. And that's just a minimum. There is no regulation of English schools in Japan at all. And we've seen incidences. There was that incident fairly recently. This was a Japanese head of a kindergarten who didn't check the bus, and a young boy died of heat stroke on the bus.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful, and that was probably a regulated school. That was probably a Ninka or a Ninka Guy school. There was a video circulated fairly recently in the past couple of years of a foreign teacher abusing, hitting a child.
Was that the one where he was slapping the kid or something?
Yeah,
I think I
yeah,
saw that. Yeah, and
yeah,
I mean, but I think those kind of things that a lot of foreigners have this kind of almost self-flagellating way of looking at the business of teaching English, where they think of us as they think of themselves and the business in Japan of teaching English as we're just kind of entertainers. We're just
yeah,
we're a performance because Japanese people don't really want to speak English. And I
yeah.
think a lot of that is actually completely untrue in a lot of ways. Like we've talked
Mm,
about this on a previous podcast that in Japan, the connection between English language ability and income is almost non-existent.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways that teachers provide a really valuable service. The same as, like, you know,
right.
going to piano lessons. Yeah, no one's expecting
Yeah,
you to become a piano concert pianist,
yeah,
but it's still an incredibly valuable skill, and it still provides you a lot of value. So
sure.
my hope would be that people can see that we're not. I don't think English language teachers in Japan are entertainers. I think we
Mm,
can be
absolutely not.
entertaining, but I don't think
Mm.
that's the job description.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there are quite a lot of different reasons for that. We've spoken a little bit earlier about, just the idea that a big company will employ anybody who looks right and will be used as a language teaching assistant or assistant teacher. I think it's really important to stress that they are not teachers. And I think it's fine to have people in the classroom who don't speak L1 Japanese here so that you can have some fluency interaction. But those people are not teachers. They're not qualified teachers. They don't know how to teach, and that's how they should be regarded. It may well be a useful tool to have in the classroom, but those people are not teachers. Imagine those poor qualified teachers who've been struggling for years to get their teaching qualifications, and they get this foreign ALT just like helicoptered into them who can't do anything. I don't mean to disparage ALTs because there are loads of really good ALTs as well, but that it has been thought of as the entertaining role, I think, and certainly teachers should be engaging. A teacher who can't engage their learners shouldn't really have a job either. Who would want to go to any teacher of anything where you're disengaged, unengaged, bored,
Yeah.
but yes, not entertainers. And I hate that term edutainment. We're not entertainers. We don't do it edutainment. I would actually say that we're not in the education industry. We're in the learning industry. And I say that because, what we teach is not state mandated and it's not state institutionally administered. Certainly parts of what we do touch on education, sort of the grammar stuff that we do to help the kids with the grammar, and we do AChem. But life that we teach English is a life skill, really.
Mhm.
I think, but we only employ qualified teachers, and we have a program of professional development, and it's not always easy being a teacher. And I think that it has been seen for quite a long time that you can get away with being a native speaker and be an entertainer if you're just funny, and entertain kids. You'll be okay. But I think kids will be more entertained by an app than somebody who is bored or not engaged. And hopefully those days are over. I think somebody was saying recently, I can't remember which company it was, but because of the pandemic, one of the larger companies has shifted their hiring focus and started hiring non-native qualified teachers in place of native speaking teachers, whether they were qualified or not. And I don't think they said which chain it was, but it's a big concern, I think. But apparently all of the Japanese teachers and staff are so much happier now that they're working with qualified teachers of English, regardless of where they're from, because they take their role seriously, take their job seriously, they try hard, and they've been through the whole process that they are taking the learners through. And this is something I wrote about in my blog as well,
Yeah.
that there was a time when I couldn't drive, and I learned from a driving instructor. And there was a time when my driving instructor couldn't drive either. And he happened to be a man. He learned to drive, and then he learned to become a driving instructor. And he was good at both, but he wasn't a natural born driving instructor. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as a natural born qualified English teacher either.
Right. And I
So I
think
think,
that is something that I noticed once I came to Japan, that once I got my TEFL qualification and I started understanding what specifically I was doing in the classroom, what skills that was developing and how that was working, that I thought, oh, okay, actually now I do actually understand more about this, that I can deliberately direct the education of the students. Like, it's not like I was doing such a terrible job before.
yeah,
It's not like I wasn't doing
right.
anything. I just
Yeah, for
wasn't
sure.
very good at it because I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
whether what I was doing was helping or not.
Yeah, I had a very, very similar experience. I started off without any teaching qualifications. I was basically, before I came to Japan, I was going to do my CELTA in the UK and get a flight to Japan. I only had enough money to do one of the two. I couldn't afford to do the CELTA and buy a ticket and have a little bit of money left over. So I decided not to do the CELTA. And I don't regret it because it got me to Japan. But I wish I'd had some formal training before I started teaching. I got it very quickly. I started it within a year of being here, and you're definitely better off if you've got a teaching certificate, a TESOL of some description, CELTA ideally, young learners certificate, but then it's the practica that are of real value, and the feedback on your practica that are of real value, and then ongoing professional development. So yeah, get standards, get qualified, enroll into organizations, embrace technology. And also, if you're going to be an employed teacher here long term, realize that this is not a high paying industry. So make sure that you save and invest,
And
put
not
some
just the
money.
pension, not just the national pension, because
Yeah,
every Japanese person I've ever spoken to, and most of the foreigners who have been here a long time, we all recognize very simply that the Japanese national pension that you are obligated to pay into will never be enough to give you a
yeah,
stable living. I think
it won't be
I'm probably
enough.
expecting to not even get what I put back in, because
Right.
it's not
Well,
enough.
I
So
think, I mean, I don't know how long you're intending on living, but yeah, I'll get something from it. I also pay I make voluntary contributions into the UK pension,
mhm.
which, touch wood, I'll stay alive long enough to get it. And I'll get that from age 67, and that'll be 1.4 million yen a year or something. That's absolutely worth looking into.
Yeah.
And I think because of the contributions, I pay what I call class 2 contributions on that. It's £2.50 or £3 a week.
Yeah.
And so I should get my money back on that within a year or something. So that's absolutely worth looking into. There's a guy called Ben Sheeran who lives up in Sendai, and he writes a blog called Retire Japan, which
Mhm.
is a font of information on retiring in Japan. So you should go there and look at that.
Absolutely.
And that's definitely worth looking at. But embrace AI. It's coming. Get
Yeah.
skilled in it. Get familiar with it. There's nothing you can do about it. The robots are coming.
I think that's a great place to end this podcast. Thank you so much, Simon.
Pleasure.
If you enjoyed that episode and you like what we're doing with Inside Japan, please consider going to iTunes and giving us a 5-star rating and sharing this episode with a friend who you think it might be useful for. As always, a huge thank you to JobsinJapan.com for sponsoring this podcast, and if you're looking for our other episodes, you can find them there, and keep us in mind next time you're looking for work in Japan. Thanks so much for listening, and see you again soon.